In video lecture 2-3, we're going to be looking at the cost structure of a company and see how the cost structure impacts profit. So Cheryl here wants to know, do companies with a higher level of fixed costs experience more earnings volatility? That is, are earnings subject to a greater change, percentage change, than the change in revenue? So let's examine situations where we have a company where the costs are all fixed, another one where the costs are variable, and a third where there is a mix of fixed and variable costs. And here's our example. All fixed, all cost. All variable costs. Combination company has some variable costs and some fixed costs. Each company sells 10 units at $10 a piece. Let's take a look at their income situation. Our sales revenue for all three companies would be the same. All fixed has no variable cost, while the all variable has high variable costs, and our combination is in the middle. All fixed has the highest fixed costs, of course, none. And in this scenario right now, without any change at a level of 10, net income for all of these companies are the same. But let's see what happens when things change. We're going to have a 10% increase in sales. So instead of selling 10 units, we're going to sell 11. The price remains the same. Revenue is now 110. And we see that the net income now for the all fixed is higher. The all variable is lower because they have incurred more variable cost. So this 10% change in the number of units sold or activity results in a 25% increase for the all fixed company, as opposed to the all variable company, where a 10% increase results only in a 10% increase in net income. So there's a proportionate change between the increase in activity, units sold, and net income. For the variable, it's proportionate. For the all fixed, it's disproportionate. A 10% change results in a larger change in net income. Cheryl's concerned, what about the opposite? What if sales decrease? Will the income for all fixed go down more than the other companies? Unfortunately, Cheryl, yes it will. If we sell only 9, net income for the all variable will decrease, but not as much as compared to the combination or the all fixed. So again, for the all fixed company, a 10% reduction in activity results in a 25% reduction in net income. So now Cheryl's starting to see this. Okay, so we have a high level of fixed costs, we have high earnings volatility. That is, a small change either up or down will result in a disproportionately higher change when the cost structure is predominantly fixed. If we have predominantly variable, we're going to have a lower volatility. A change in activity will result in a lower change in net income. And this gives a risk-reward situation. Low variable costs is a less risky structure. High fixed costs is a higher risk, therefore will result in a higher potential reward, but also a higher risk. Let's take a look at our combination company and look at the contribution margin. And the contribution margin is the revenue less the variable cost. The contribution margin will contribute to the payment of fixed costs and the earning of net income. You can look at contribution margin both as a total, but also on a per unit basis. And we'll be using this in our next topic, the per unit contribution margin, when we look at cost, volume, and profit. So the contribution format of the income statement highlights the variable and fixed costs, identifies them, because this is important for management to balance so that they optimize the risk and the reward from their cost structure. The phenomenon where a small change in activity will result in a higher proportion of net income is called operating leverage. And we can quantify this by taking the contribution margin and dividing it by net income. Sure, Cheryl, I'll show you. Let's say we're selling hammers at activity level of 5,000 hammers sold. We have a contribution margin of 20,000 and net income of 5. So we take our contribution margin divided by net income, and we say we have an operating leverage with a magnitude of 4. If we take a change in activity level, a percentage, say 10%, and multiply it by the operating leverage magnitude, we would see that a 10% change in revenue will result in a 40% change in net income. And here we see that. An increase of 10%, selling 5,500 hammers, will result in a net income of 7,000, which is a 40% increase from the current activity of 5,000. All right, so we can summarize our cost behavior on a total cost. When we deal with total costs, fixed costs will remain constant. Variable costs, the total cost will change in direct proportion. So a 10% change in activity will result in no change to the fixed cost as long as we remain within the relevant range, but it will have the effect of a 10% increase in variable cost. On a per unit basis, if we have an increase of 10%, the fixed costs per unit will decrease. For variable costs, the fixed cost per unit will remain the same regardless of changes in the activity. Again, as long as we remain in that relevant range. So that sums up the effect of the cost structure on profitability. I hope Cheryl and I were helpful.